Hi everybody, my name is Rachel Steinlicht, and today I will be presenting on the motet in the 13th century. Sorry about my voice. If you can't understand me, I'm a little bit sick, so I'll try to re-record some of these if you can't understand it. Alright, so music grew a lot during the Middle Ages. In the 11th and 12th centuries, polyphony emerged in the form of organum, conducti, and the motet. I'm going to focus on the formation, transformation, and the defining characteristics of the motet. During the 12th century, before the motet came into existence, Leoninus, Perotinus, and their colleagues at the University of Paris wrote ornate polyphonic compositions specifically in the form of 2, 3, and 4-voice organa that set the stage for the motet. Leoninus, in particular, introduced specific sections called clausula into his organa, and Perotinus and his colleagues latched onto the idea, and they wrote hundreds of discant clausula that could be interchanged with the original clausula whenever you wanted to. So a choir master could have 5, 6, 7, sometimes even up to 10 different clausula to choose from to switch up his musical service, which I think is pretty cool. As composing became more complex, as it was written down more rather than being just improvised, certain guidelines were established so that it was easier for other people to perform the music. In an organum quadruplum, or a 4-voice organum, the 4 voices would be written from the bottom up. So the tenor would be written first, or taken from another chant, and then the duplum, or the second voice, would be written to complement the tenor. This process would continue. The triplum, or the third voice, would complement both of the original parts, and then the quadruplum, or the 4th voice, would finally be written to complement all 3 of the original voices. Although this process seems more labor-intensive than writing all 4 parts simultaneously, or at least it seemed that way to me, in reality, this freed performers because they could remove the upper parts one at a time, and the composition was still a harmonically cohesive musical work. So, for example, if a choir master wanted to alter an organum, quadruplum, or clausula for a specific performance, he could drop the quadruplum, or the uppermost voice, and be left with a 3-voice organum, or he could go one step farther and drop the triplum and be left with a double organum. However, you wouldn't do the tenor and the triplum together without the duplum because it just wouldn't work. This form of organa was extremely popular and continued throughout the Middle Ages, but at the beginning of the 13th century, the discant clausula, which was also right up there with the organa as far as popularity goes, the discant clausula evolved into the motet. The defining characteristic between the motet that separates it from the previous organa and clausula is the multiplicity of text and a tenor with a pre-existent melody. Another separation between the two is that in organum, the duplum and the triplum are twin melodies. They follow the same melodic and rhythmic patterns for the most part. And in a motet, the duplum and the triplum are separate melodic lines. They can stand on their own. However, a lot of Perotin's discant clausula demonstrate all of these things. So, for the purpose of classification, he was writing them as discant clausula, but in reality they were basically the exact same thing as early motets, so he is often credited with the invention of the motet. Motet comes from the French word mot, meaning word, and the motet comes from the French word mot, no T, which means word, and was originally used to designate the duplum of the clausula with an added French or Latin text. So instead of calling it the duplum, they would call it the motetus. As the form of composition grew in popularity, the motet also came to represent the entire work. Originally, the first stage of the motet composition consisted of adding text to an existing discant clausula, but subsequent developments included writing a new duplum or motetus to an existing tenor or writing a new text for an existing motet. Both of these techniques were just forms for reworking an already existing piece of polyphony. So another approach that became more popular later on was to take a section of a chant, rework it into a new tenor, and then write completely new voices for the new tenor. So this would result in a brand new piece of music that was specific to that composer, and that took off in popularity really quickly and became the normal. Sorry. Okay, an excellent example of a typical early double or two-voice motet is Factum et Salutaire Dominus, found in the Norton Anthology on page 98. This motet is a direct adaptation of a discant clausula that was created by adding words to the upper voices to the clausula on Dominus, which is found on page 76 of the anthology, if you've already looked at it. The original discant clausula, which was already a musical embellishment of the word, has had words added onto the clausula, making it, in a sense, a gloss on a gloss, textbook said. So it's an embellishment on an embellishment, which sounds like it would be really confusing, but it turns out to be just gorgeous. The resulting motet is a carefully layered musical work with a combination of borrowed and original elements. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Alright, so we were talking about the original discant clausula and how the clausula had words added onto it to embellish it. So, fitting words to a pre-existing melodic line was quite difficult, and that is why by the middle of the 13th century, most composers were choosing to write new duplums that they could fit to the words rather than trying to fit the words that they wanted to already existing duplums, because it just, you never get quite the right feel and the right accents on the right syllables, and it's a mess. And so that's why generally librettists work with the composers to mesh them from the very beginning, even today. Okay, at this time, if you could go to the norton.com to the listening lab and listen to Factum et Salutaire Dominus, and listen to about 45 seconds each of 21A, B, C, and D. The score is in the Norton Anthology on page 98 if you'd like to follow along, but this is a basic description and example of how text was added to an already existent clausula. So it's quite fascinating, and it should take you 3-ish minutes to complete. Right.